Hello and good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this video. Joining us for this video, we have Dr. Crystal Peebles from Ithaca College, is also popularly known as IC, and she's going to share with us about how undergraduate program in music is structured. So it's a pleasure having you here, Crystal.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So before we get going, let me share a little bit about Professor Peebles. Dr. Crystal Peebles joined the music theory faculty at Ithaca College in fall 2014, following a visiting faculty position at Northern Arizona University. She completed her undergraduate studies, music education and Suzuki Pedagogy from East Carolina University and her graduate studies in music theory from Florida State University. Her dissertation explores the connection between musical expectations and a perception of musical closure. She has presented her research in music cognition, both regionally and internationally. Along with research in music cognition, she has presented research regionally and nationally on analysis of music since 1945 and performance and analysis. She has also published an article on music theory pedagogy in the open source book Engaging Students, Essays in Music Pedagogy, entitled Using Audacity to Participate in Active Musical Listening. Dr. Peebles is in the contra dance community, is active in the contra dance community as a dancer, musician, and a caller. She has recently taken a scholarly interest in dance, working with Dr. Matt Thomas in the math department to examine mathematical representations of the structure of contra dancing. That's fantastic. So it's a pleasure to have you here, Crystal. And let's start. Let's start off by asking you about what is music. What is a major in music, and how is it structured across 4 years?
Absolutely. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I have some pictures to go along with this.
Absolutely.
So my name is Crystal Peebles, and I have been here at Ithaca College, oh goodness, for about 7 years here. 7 years now. And as part of my work here at Ithaca College, I advise a lot of students who want to go into music majors or who are currently music majors. So what is a music major? So the first thing we have to kind of differentiate is there's two different flavors of music major. There's the liberal arts music major, and then there are the professional degrees. Now this exact breakdown varies from institution to institution, but usually if you are aiming for a liberal arts experience, you will be getting a bachelor's of arts in music. But if you're aiming for a professional degree in music, you'll be getting a bachelor's of music. So BA, Bachelor of Art, BM, Bachelor's of Music. And the way they differ is the proportion of music classes to classes outside of music. You can see here on this really rough chart, I have just basic percentages of music classes in orange and non-music classes in yellow. And you can see that a BA has mostly classes outside of music, while a BM has mostly classes within music. Now these percentages are really rough. I'm taking them as the average from the handbook for the NASM handbook. NASM is the organization that kind of governs schools of music here. And so this is some rough percentages. So the first thing you have to kind of decide is what type of music experience you want. Do you want to think about music in the broader cultural context? You might want to think about BA. But if you're aiming for a music profession, then a BM is your path. Now, within this block of music classes, there are several different types of music classes, and I'm getting to the answer to your question, Devish, about what a 4-year degree looks like. But first, I want to kind of break down the types of music classes that both the BA and a BM will experience. The first group of classes is the musicianship classes. These are the classes where you develop the skills in order to practice your musical craft more fully. These classes involve music theory, where you learn how to read and interpret music, oral skills, where you learn how to listen to music, hear music, write it down, look at a score and read it, sing it off without hearing it first on an instrument. Some institutions also require keyboard classes where you learn how to play the piano. So that's the first group of classes. The second group of classes are the performance classes, right? This is the meat right here, where you have your private lessons. Usually, most institutions, you'll have a weekly lesson one-on-one with a studio professor, usually 30 minutes to an hour, depends on the degree. Along with that, you have studio classes where everyone who studies with that one professor gets together once a week and they play for each other. And then there's ensembles. Ensembles can include things like orchestra and band, but also chamber music. And we have a klezmer ensemble here. We have an African drumming and dance ensemble. So there's a ton of different ensembles that many institutions offer. Now, if you're gearing towards a more professional degree in music, we also have our professional classes. And these are classes that usually the BM students take. And those include classes in music education, music therapy, composition, and so forth. And then on top of all of that, we have music electives, classes that aren't necessarily required for a degree, but they're about music. I teach a music elective that's open to both music majors and students outside of the School of Music. I teach a class on music psychology, which is a music class, but it's open to everyone and it's not required for any degree. So those are the general types of music classes.
Fantastic. Before we get going, I have a couple of quick questions. First is, say I'm interested in drums, right?
Okay.
So or another percussion instrument. So which of, when I want to practice that, which of these sort of a range of classes would practicing a musical instrument will fall into?
Really good question. So as part of the performance classes, you have to practice, right? So even though you only have like maybe one lesson a week, a lot of your time, probably between 3 and 4 hours a day, is just practicing your instrument. And so students who succeed in this major are students who are able to organize their time efficiently in order to put time aside to practice their instrument. There are also classes usually falling in the elective category that teaches you how to play instruments. For example, we have a class here at IC that teaches people who have never played a keyboard or piano before to play the keyboard, right? And this is open to the entire college. We also have some of our ensembles are also beginning ensembles. We have a steel drum ensemble here that is open to anyone who wants to, even if you've never played before, right? So, so there are different types of experiences for students to want to learn an instrument as well. Okay, so here we go. So if we're thinking, I'm going to go back to the BM first, because usually a bachelor's of music, the professional music degree, is the most structured of all the degrees, because in order to succeed in the world as a practicing musician, you really have to have good chops, right? You have to know your stuff. And so usually for a 4-year plan for a performance major, so this is if you're a bachelor's of music and you want to study performance, you start music day one, and we'll talk a little bit in a minute about the audition process that a lot of schools require for a professional BM degree. So day one, you're already taking your musicianship classes, your lessons, and your ensembles. And you can see that continues throughout the first 3 years at least, where you're taking your musicianship classes. Usually by year 2, you start taking some history along with your musicianship classes. In year 3, you have more room in your schedule for music electives. And if you're a performance major, you're gearing up for your first recital. And then in year 4, usually that's the most flexible of all years, because you're gearing up for an even bigger recital in year 4. And so a lot of your time is just getting your program together in order to give a full-length solo performance. So this is what a 4-year plan for a performance major looks like. If we're thinking about other degrees, there's going to be changes. Like a BM in education, music education, would have a lot of the pre-service classes, the music ed classes creeping in probably like halfway through year 1, and then there's student teaching in year 4. So there's some changes with this, but this is the basic plan. If you are a BM student, you will start music on day 1 of your undergraduate career, because music is a skill. You can't sit down and like study, cram for music, right? It's a skill that you have to build over time. So starting at the very beginning is something that you'll see in common for a lot of degrees, regardless of the institution you're looking at.
Fantastic. I have another question here. So you mentioned that there are different kinds of ensembles, includes bands and orchestra, and then you mentioned something like chamber music. I don't really understand what chambers are. Would you give me an example of that?
Sure. So we can kind of think of ensembles in 2 big categories. There's the large ensemble that has a conductor up front and the conductor tells you what to do. And then you have your smaller ensembles. And that's what I mean by a chamber ensemble.
Okay.
It's a smaller group of musicians where there's no conductor telling you what to do. Instead, you work collaboratively with your colleagues in order to create music. So it is a different skill set, right? I'm a violinist, and so being able to breathe to come in together, right? That's something you learn in chamber music.
Wow, wonderful. That's fantastic. So let's move on to the next question, which is, what are certain but before that, let's talk about
So I just want to touch on some. Actually, these are the concentration. Can I talk about some of the concentrations?
Yes, absolutely. Please.
Okay, sorry about that. I think I stepped on your question, but so the BA in music, because this is really a great degree. It's not the professional degree, but you still get to take a lot of music classes. Like 30 to 40% of your degree is music. But if you are thinking about double majoring or going in for pre-med or pre-law, a BA in music is perfect for that. One of my current advisees, he's a pre-med student, wonderful bassoonist. He plays in all the big ensembles. He's like the best bassoonist we have here, but he's a BA because he wants to do pre-med. And that gives, and just having the room in your schedule to take lots of different classes is a really great thing about the BA degree. And a lot of institutions offer a BA in music. And this is contrasted with our professional degrees, right? So the BM in music performance, which is another common degree, is really about focusing on learning the skills that you need to be a professional musician. There's some flexibility. You can take some classes outside of music. A lot of students opt to take classes in business or other things that really helps them get started as a freelancing musician. But this is really a degree where you're really focused on learning the skill, cultivating your talent, right? And then another common degree that a lot of schools have is the music education degree. Many times this is a BM degree. Some schools offer this as a Bachelor of Science degree. It really depends on the institution. And most music ed programs lead to licensure in K-12 music. Of course, every single state in America has different rules, and so this is going to differ from state to state. But this is kind of a degree that a lot of students opt in who want to teach music.
Got it. Okay.
And then there's so many other concentrations. And do you want me to like touch on all?
Briefly, if you can, maybe a couple of.
So music therapy is an up and coming concentration. It combines music with therapeutic practices, and so this is a degree that leads towards being able to use music as a therapy, like different situations, like in hospital, hospice, or even in educational situations. You might need a master's degree depending on licensing requirements, but that is a possibility. A lot of schools offer sound recording technology, learning how to record. There's composing, right? That's a little self-explanatory. We also have music theory and music history as possible degree paths. So learning more about how music works and the history of music. There's also music administration and music business as concentrations in some institutions. And then there's my favorite, which is a degree we offer here, music plus something else, where you get to choose the something else. And that's something we do at Ithaca College, and that's called Bachelor's of Music with an Outside Field. And we have students who creatively cobble together classes in order to create their own outside field. And it's just really interesting what sort of things they come up with. And so these are for students who are really motivated to be creative in how they want to construct their degree.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing what all concentrations exist within or under the major in music umbrella. Moving on to the next question, do share a little bit about what kind of students would do well as a music major, or what are certain skills that the students can develop during their high schools to do well when they study music at college?
Really great question. So the first thing that I need to say is that a lot of schools of music require an extra audition. This is usually on top of the applying for the college. You then have to audition on your instrument. And so, and this is particularly true for the professional BM degrees. And so there are different requirements for the audition, and it differs from institution to institution. Some institutions want you to perform in more of a Western classical style. And so being proficient on an instrument at that level, a lot of them have repertoire lists that you would want to make sure that you have that repertoire learned. Other institutions are more geared towards popular music or jazz. And so it's real. So when you're looking at schools and thinking about music schools, you should really look at their audition requirements to make sure that you are learning the repertoire, learning the skills that you would need to be successful. The reason why an audition exists is in order to make sure that students who are coming into the program will be able to complete it successfully, because a lot of these programs are really intense. And if you don't already have some level of expertise, it would be a very challenging program to get through. But in thinking about more general characteristics, music students, by their very nature, really need to be creative. They need to be able to problem solve creatively. They need to be able to think creatively in order to create music, right? And so that is a characteristic that a lot of students have. They're also very self-motivated. In order to have the motivation to practice every day for hours on end takes a lot of self-motivation, right? And the only way to get better at any skill is to put in the hours. No, not mindless hours, really focused hours on what you're working on, right? And so these students are self-motivated. They're usually really organized and having a planner, having a schedule. They're able to say, okay, I have a performance of this piece in a month. Let me work backwards to figure out how I'm going to learn this piece in time for my performance, right? So those types of skills. And then I think the biggest thing is music students need a growth mindset. And what I mean by this is being a music major, you're constantly being critiqued. And it can be kind of demoralizing, quite honestly, because you're working really hard and there's always room for improvement, right? And usually your teacher will just want you to get better. And so you're being critiqued, you're being told how to do things a little bit better, how to fix problems. And so having a mindset where any critique is not a reflection on you, like if you play a wrong note, it's not the end of the world, you're not a terrible person, right? But it's more of a, how can I grow from this? How can I improve myself as a musician? So having that healthy frame of mind is really important for success as a music student.
Wow, wonderful. Absolutely. I think being able to take criticism positively and sort of building on it, practicing. I mean, there is no substitute of practicing. Get up and sort of go and sort of work hard for a few hours, practice, practice, practice. Even if it feels boring, you need to continue practice and master that skill.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings me to my next question, which is, what do you see your students upon graduating? Like, what do they do after they graduate as a music major?
So there are many options here. If you're going in for one of the professional degrees like music performance, music education, music therapist, I mean, you could be a performer, educator, or therapist. You might need additional training for the education and the therapy options, but those are kind of like the standard degrees that a lot of students think are the only options, but there's actually a lot more options. For example, I know students who have gone on to be music librarians, so curating music collections and libraries, or even being the music librarian for an orchestra. I know music students who have gone on to be arts administrators. So that means like helping to run the background work of like an orchestra or other performing organization. I also have students who have gone on to software development, particularly with programs or software programs like Audacity or Spotify, right? Creating the algorithms that point listeners to what they would want to listen to next, right? So those are some other options there. There are also I also had students who have taken their music degree and gone into nonprofit organizations, really trying to bring arts into cities, into areas that don't have existing infrastructure for art education. Um, we have actually a really great program here for our sound recording technology, and so there's a lot of students who become sound engineers. But also, we have a ton of students who don't do music professionally. The act of studying music, learning music, teaches you more skills than just music itself, right? Thinking about the liberal arts curriculum here, it teaches you how to think creatively, think critically, work well with others, like in a chamber music, being able to work well with others. Um, it teaches you to advocate for yourself. There's a lot of things that music can teach you outside of like, let's play some notes, right? One of my good friends, she got her degree, a BA in music, and now she's a lawyer, right? So there's no real limit to what you can do with the skills you can get from a music degree.
Wonderful, really. I mean, when I would think of music, uh, in my limited knowledge, I would think, okay, if you're learning music, you'd go and become a performer. But absolutely, I mean, there's so many things that music teaches you, so many skills that you develop. As you were telling about how chamber works or how the orchestra works, it helps you team building skills, and it helps you sort of learn how to coordinate with people, or how to understand non-verbal cues, maybe sometimes, right?
Yeah, sure. And also, like, just because you're not doing music for money, you can still do music. There's several. Ithaca is a great, vibrant music city, and every night I see former students who are doing other things now, but they are playing in the bars at night. So you can still play for fun, right? And you still
Yes.
have those skills to make music with your friends.
Absolutely. So that brings us to actually the final question for the session, and that is, where do you see music as a major heading, or what are some future trends that you see coming into this major over the next 5 years, or let's say in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, certainly. So I think that based on our current enrollment here at Ithaca College, our music degree with the outside field is actually really popular. And so I think there's going to be more of an emphasis on music and something else. So you can get both the hard and soft skills of being a music major, and plus something else. So music and foreign language, music and theater, music and business, right? So I think that is going to be something that is going to grow in the next 10 years. And I would encourage students, as they're looking at institutions and thinking about music as a major, to see what possibilities there is to combine music and something else. And part of it is practical. It's really hard to make a living as a musician, but that shouldn't be your only motivating factor. We are complex beings, and it's always good to combine things together to get an interdisciplinary view. I think also there's a trend towards more flexible musical styles represented in the American Academy. I know that several institutions specialize in just one musical style, but I think there's going to be a trend towards more flexibility. And that is for a practical purpose. The more versed you are in different styles, the more marketable you are as a performer or as an educator. But also, a part of being a music major is learning how to see your music and the music of others in their different cultural lenses. And so the more open you are to different styles, the more open you are to other humans, right? Music is a part of every human. There is not a single culture on this planet that does not have music in one way or another. And we can say that perhaps music is the defining feature of humanity. And so being able to understand someone else's music is almost a way of being able to understand someone else. And so I think there's going to be more flexible musical styles going to be offered even at different conservatory levels. Advances in technology, I mean, it's kind of amazing if you think about 5 years or 10 years ago when Pandora was just starting off with its music algorithms, and now we have like Spotify and stuff like that. I think there's going to be more advances in technology. I think there's going to be more emphasis on probably computer programming, and so maybe also artificial intelligence and how it can compose and perform, because by teaching a computer to do something, you actually learn a little bit about how a human brain might do it. So I think there's going to be that sort of emphasis. We already have a growing interest in my field, which is music cognition, how we understand how it's basically music psychology, right? So how we understand the brain and how it processes music. So I think that's going to continue as well. And finally, I think there's going to be more of an emphasis on outreach, not just on trying to get more people to listen to like orchestras, right? But outreach in the terms of providing access to music programs, quality music programs. And I think that's going to continue to be a trend as we think about equitable musicianship in a way, trying to make sure everyone has some sort of access to music so they can express themselves, but being flexible with what type of styles we use in this music outreach.
Fantastic. To all the viewers who are watching this video, if you are students, just show this video to your parents that, there's so much that you can do with your music. I'm sure you are passionate about music, you are passionate about an instrument, and that's probably why you're watching this video. And I'm sure your parents might be wondering, what is he going to do with music? Well, there's so much that you can do, and it's a fantastic way to do music and something, right? It helps sort of add so many skills which are so marketable and eventually, will lead to jobs or maybe businesses that will help, for jobs and businesses. Yeah. So
Yeah.
just show this video to your parents. I'm sure they're going to appreciate it. And Crystal, thank you so much for sharing such wonderful insights about music, about the structure of the programs, and helping us differentiate between how a BA in music is different than a BM. And of course, how BA in music and something, how does that work? So fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. it was an absolute pleasure having you here and having this conversation with you.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share about the music degree.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.